Okay, let's get started. Welcome everyone to our webinar, Communication and Data to Accelerate Transformation. My name is Maria Poli. I'm the Integrated Marketing Manager at GuideSpark. While we're giving everyone a chance to arrive, and before diving in, I'll go over the housekeeping item for today. So at the bottom of your screen, you can see a little QA section. You can submit any question you might have there. We will be answering every question at the end of the webinar. If you use social media to post about this webinar, please use @GuideSpark or #GSWebinar. After the event, we will be sending out the recording of the slides of today's webinar. And with no further ado, I'll let our presenter, Charles, take over.
Thank you, Maria, and hello, everyone. I very much appreciate the time you're taking to attend this webinar. A little bit about myself. I spent over 20 years in consumer marketing and advertising. And during that time, I owned and operated a few creative and digital agencies worldwide. For the past 3 years, I have been leading our solutions and studios teams for GuideSpark. And that really spans multiple strategic, design, technology, and customer engagement groups that enable GuideSpark's products to power employee communications for leading enterprises. Let's see, what else? Well, I used to have longer hair like you see in this picture, but after a frightfully exhausting debate with my wife on whether or not hair product can be considered an essential staple during these times, well, clearly you can see who came out on the losing end of that argument. So with that said, I'm actually going to turn off my video in an effort to preserve dignity and optimize bandwidth. As a caveat, if my audio drops because my microphone has been a little bit finicky, Maria will jump in and let me know so I can plug in an old school headset, but I do apologize in advance if that happens. And here we go. All right, so our last webinar was hosted by Kohi, our Director of Product Management, on how to leverage data to make better business decisions. If you have not had a chance to watch that webinar, I highly recommend you download it from our website because it contains a tremendous amount of valuable insight on how to look at and use data for practical business scenarios. Today's topic is how to accelerate change effectiveness through communication. That is the formal topic for today, but being of slightly rebellious nature, I stuck the "and" data on the end of the title. One, to extend the theme that Kohi so adeptly managed in our last webinar, but second, because communications cannot be as successful in the absence of data. I'm a huge stickler about the importance of pairing communications with data. Why? Well, because we all apply or personally experience the repercussions of data thousands of times a day. You know, whenever you open up Slack or Microsoft Teams or, write, "Hey, so-and-so," well, you are using data. And, when you get spam marketing email, and if you're super lucky, maybe you get hundreds of them every day, and they're addressed to you and somehow have suspiciously derived the company you work for and your job title, data is being leveraged again. So from personalization to segmentation to hyper retargeting of advertisements and media, your brain already relies on preconceived expectations for communications. So we'll start with a little bit around the current and quite remarkable state of digital transformation. The accelerated challenge that many companies are facing today should provide some meaningful context around pairing communications with data. We'll look at a high-level framework for a change communications plan and how to think of developing and executing a journey to guide employees through change. And while data has many forms and possible points of influence, we'll hone in on the role of audience and results or engagement data. And finally, we'll talk through the steps of creating a communicate journey, along with a few key considerations to getting started. Now, there is a staggering abundance of evidence to show that, even on a level playing field, during optimal situations, successfully navigating a company through digital transformation initiatives is already really hard. I mean, it takes years. The majority of companies will fail, according to Forbes, and its cost to the economy is in the hundreds of billions of dollars. But now is not the best of times. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, that's putting it lightly, right? Not only are employees facing staggering societal and environmental pressures due to COVID-19, we're all looking at extremes around us. 3 years ago, 5% of Americans worked from home. As of last month, we're now over 50% according to Zapier. Zoom has seen their active daily user volume multiplied by 20 times. Tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of companies are now faced with a hard reality that they no longer have the luxury of a few years to map out their digital transformation process. They are literally having to transform in 2 months or even 2 weeks. So there is a lot of fear and uncertainty to navigate during this time of forced transformation. And for those of you that are in admittedly high stress positions to shape, craft, or lead with communications during this time, it is imperative to understand that the potential negative impact of these heightened events, be it accelerated digital transformation or recessionary pressures, is not employee fear, it's employee disengagement. And by the way, an individual disengaged employee can cost a company up to 34% of that employee's salary per year. And that was from a report recently put out by the research firm DecisionWise. So Harvard Business Review had a great article a little over a year ago, well before sort of the current climate that we're facing. And the foundation of that article is that digital transformation is not actually about technology. Digital transformation is actually about people. And for that process to be successful, people need to have the right mindset. And that's what we're here to talk about today. Communications as a primary means to change employee mindsets, whether it be behavior, alignment, or fast-tracking adoption. So I really can't overemphasize the critical role that communications, or by extension a communication strategy, will need to play for a successful or accelerated digital transformation initiative. And there are a few things that go into developing that communications, or what I will refer to as a communication journey for employees. And we'll discuss this in the upcoming slides, including how architecture, content development, strategy, and administration of the journey all come together in a quite beautiful and harmonious way. And so admittedly, I'm a big Uber geek when it comes to the power of effective communications. You really can change mindsets. You can influence employee behavior in amazing and positive ways. So let's circle back around to the importance of data. Why is data critical? Well, so you don't end up like this guy, right? Or I should say, your employees don't end up like this. We talked about how expensive a disengaged employee can be. Well, a disengaged employee becomes disengaged over time, and poor communications can certainly lead them down that path. Think about the last time you became all googly-eyed by all the amazing marketing lists you were on. Well, the sheer volume of email noise has effectively caused your brain to start to block out unnecessary disruption from all those spam emails. But Charles, those emails do leverage data, right? I mean, they are personalized. Yeah, but in an entirely transactional and one-off sense. The point of a communicate journey is that you're developing an ongoing channel to engage with the employee. These aren't one-off communications, and customizing or personalizing is only the first step. Remember, in consumer marketing and advertising, brands are having to compete for your attention. So there is naturally disruption and noise to block out. But in employee communication, you as the company, you own and control that channel. It should give you a leg up. But because our brains are so pre-wired to mainstream media, you really have to make sure you're connecting with employees on a meaningful, targeted, and personal level. And that's what data allows you to do. Communication will provide a stable bridge, but it's really data that helps move the employee from one end to the other. So what goes into a journey? How do you go about creating one? So, we'll start with the question. Does your company have a change strategy, and is communication core to achieving your business goals? Well, fantastic. So now we can be best friends. Your program or initiative will require a communication plan, one that does not look at communications as a single email or an analog presentation. I mean, because let's be honest with each other, I mean, who really wants to go through an 80-slide presentation these days? So you start by architecting a journey, which is about asset hierarchy and the flow of the experience. Think of it as the blueprint to your new home. What aspects of this communication is best suited for particular forms of multimedia? Those are your assets. And maybe this program is about helping employees. Sorry, I got cut off. So maybe this program is really about helping employees through a challenging event like digital transformation. And we're best suited with starting with a soft introductory video to help establish sort of an inspirational stage. You may want checklists, right, as digital documents so that they're easy for employees to print out. And maybe your company already has a video around its mission, vision, and values that you want to incorporate. Your journey architecture begins to take shape and form. And now that you know what assets you need to support the architecture, you can create your content. You're building up the walls, the rooms, and the substance within your blueprint. Writers help to clarify your program messaging, designers help to create multimedia assets, and producers stress over all the time, stakeholder feedback and whether or not they're gonna miss their delivery milestones. I'm not joking, I cut my teeth as a producer, so I used to stress about that stuff, while I was asleep. But your content starts to take shape and form, and the assets align to your architecture while still conforming to your program or initiative goals. Your home is looking quite lovely, and before you know it, you have completed development of your communicate journey. Communication strategy ensures that your content is ready to deploy. You want visitors to walk through your new home. You want them to enter the rooms and interact with what you spent time designing and building. So it's a sequencing of those assets, the timing or delivery of those assets, the reach messaging or call to actions that will compel your employees to take that journey and really interact with it. Communication strategy is critical because without it, all the work you've done is purely operational. You might as well stick all that beautiful media on Box or Dropbox and send out a link to your employees. And if we had another hour, I would love to dive deeper into the significance of communication strategy and how it helps to formulate KPIs and metrics and more. But unfortunately, digital transformation waits for no one. So you implement your strategy into your communication platform of choice, and you deploy your journey to assigned employee segments or groups. You can start to manage the journey, and this completes the circular flow by which you can start to also measure and iterate your communication effectiveness. All right, so what, that was almost 5 minutes without me mentioning data, right? It's got to be a new record. There are multiple forms and groups for data, but we're really going to focus on two for today. Your internal database of records for your company, such as your HRIS system, that's going to provide data for personalization and segmentation of your communications. These are singular data points, meaning an employee name, their age, title, functional org, geographic locale, and so on. But they're powerful because they allow your communications to be personalized and segmented for your employees. Coming out of the deployment of your journey, you're going to begin to accrue engagement or results data. This is ongoing data as opposed to singular data. And what that means is that this is the data that will help to improve and refine your communications, which is why it can be used to measure and iterate your overall journey effectiveness. In this data model, one set of data goes in to create stickiness with the end employees, and one set of data comes out that allows you to improve and optimize your communications. And thus, we see the beginning of a beautiful friendship. So using data well begets good data, and using data poorly can lead to bad data. If you take time to really set up your audience data, you'll have more data points that you can look at in terms of your engagement. And that is key to improving your results over time. You might, let's say, create a single journey around performance management, but for Joe, who is, let's say, a young plant manager who is usually on the ground floor with his cell phone and almost never in front of his laptop, his engagement results are going to appear much different than, let's say, your non-deskless workers or your South American regional cohorts who operate on a completely different work schedule, and your performance management communications probably won't be as effective unless it's translated and set up as a subgroup for delivery. And there, 2 more data points. But your most effective route to hypothesizing results or testing A/B iterations, even customizing some of your content, is going to be grounded in results that rely heavily on your data. Now, I have seen companies reboot entire programs because they found them to be ineffective. That incurs a staggering amount of time and resources. In the consumer world, if a product release isn't successful, you don't scrap the product, right? You test by using data and you start tweaking the messaging, or maybe you try a different marketing delivery channel, you segment different audience personas and so on. The same principles apply here. And your communications platform is a powerful tool that can help you review analytics, measure results, and then iterate and improve your overall program effectiveness. And data is the important key to unlocking this. And so here are steps to creating your communicate journey. From defining your strategy to architecting and creating your media and materials, to ensuring that you have your data to inform your strategy, to deploying and measuring and iterating. I'm not going to go into each of these, but this will be available after the webinar to provide some guidance along your way. I will, however, highlight a few here. I'm not saying that these are more important than the others. I love all my children equally, but I did want to draw some attention to these few. Employee personas are a really intriguing way to start looking at employee segments. Personas are typically used in marketing, but the idea that certain employee groups can share common features allow you to move past individual segmentation while avoiding sort of a one-size-fits-all model. So there are studies also to show that thinking of your employee groups as personas can help with overall empathy and an improved employee experience. We focused on results or engagement data, but there's also data that can come from feedback loops. So results data, engagement data, that's quantitative in that they'll measure interaction rates, average time spent, duration of interaction, and so on. But when you're thinking about improving effectiveness, you do want to consider pairing quantitative data with qualitative data, which will come in the form of feedback loops like polls and surveys. Next, you'll want to think about integrated systems. Communications platforms have moved beyond just point A to point B passage of information. Communication platforms are now part of an enterprise ecosystem, and they can integrate with your HRS system, your SSO software, Slack, Microsoft Teams, SMS capabilities, and so much more to create a really integrated or holistic experience for your employees. And finally, there is a difference, I believe, between sort of operational or tactical reach communications and organizational or strategic change communications. Some communications just focus on a shotgun approach. I mean, it's get as much content out there to employees in the form of emails, microsites, web portals, and mobile applications. That's operational. And the clear difference is that in organizational or strategic change communications, you have the ability to measure, iterate, and optimize the effectiveness over time because it is an ongoing commitment. So I hope you'll bear some of these key considerations top of mind as you begin creating your own employee journeys. Make sure data is core to how you shape your metrics, define your approach, and set up your employee personas. You can't go wrong if you lead with data. Second, it's easy to get overwhelmed. Many of you are probably juggling multiple programs and communication priorities. And something I've heard a lot from companies during this pandemic is that there's almost too much information out there. So it's okay to plan small. Try a pilot with a limited number of employees and then scale. You can think big while taking small steps. And finally, events around us are going to wait for no one. Commit to better communication effectiveness and don't be afraid to take that first step. Change is hard. But pandemic altering change, I mean, we're in a whole different ballgame, and successful outcomes will require patience, but I've seen many a company get there by just taking that first step, and I hope you will too. So that was our quick run through of how to accelerate change effectiveness using communications and data. At this time, we'll take a couple questions. Oh, and I do see the questions, Maria, so I can answer. I can bring these up. Let's see. Can you provide some tactics that can be useful for digital transformation communication, or are there quick or easy communication tactics you've seen that companies have used to help their employees through these hard times? Fortunately and unfortunately, communication is a process, and more importantly, a commitment to the process. So it's unfortunate in that, in my opinion, there aren't quick fix communication solutions to pulling employees together, or flipping on a increase employee morale by 100 points magic light switch. I wish there were, but any company that claims they can do that is selling snake oil. But why this is fortunate? I think it's fortunate because since communication is a process, there is an ongoing measure that can be built and improved upon. You have to commit to it to see results. And if your commitment is to helping employees, then hopefully you'll agree that it deserves a long-term view. So I guess in a long way to answering your question, and thank you for asking it, by the way, I would say try to steer your focus towards a long-term strategy rather than short-term tactics. I'm not saying that there aren't tactics. I mean, for example, a bi-weekly sort of internal podcast maybe where your employees share their own perspectives for getting through remote work challenges, that could provide an amazing springboard to positively impact company culture. But without a communication strategy for how that's going to develop and grow, be measured and iterated, and achieve objectives or results, it really makes for a temporary band-aid at best when it could be something so much more powerful. Another question, when is a communicate journey too much? Aren't there instances when you wouldn't use a journey to communicate with employees? Absolutely. I mean, we think about communicate messages, and we think about communicate journeys. And really the difference between messages and journeys is that the former, messages, can be used more effectively for ad hoc or quick announcements, like an upcoming office closure, right? Communicate journeys should only be used when you're looking at sort of extended, ongoing, or annual communication. So employee onboarding, yearly benefits enrollment, those types of larger programs or initiatives are better suited for a communicate journey. Any other questions? Oh, Maria, I think we can probably wrap up then.
Yeah, can you put the last slide, please? So thank you everyone for joining. We will be sending you the slides and the recording of this presentation later today. If you have any question that raise after that, feel free to respond to that email and we'll be happy to answer. Have a great day.